Welcome, everybody. This is José Barzola from the Matsunaga Institute for Peace at the conference at the University of Hawaii in Manoa. I am also the Peace Corps Prep Coordinator here at the University of Hawaii. The Peace Corps Prep program is a program that we've had here since January 2018. It is a wonderful program that really connects the classes, the experience related to the sectors so that students can then ideally get the skill sets and everything that they can fulfill within their own academic curriculum. There's great opportunities to double up and count classes that not only count for your major or another minor with the prep certificate. The beauty of it is because, and it is the only program that you can do this with at UH Manoa, partially because the certificate actually comes out of the Peace Corps University programs, not out of UH Manoa. I'm just the liaison or the bridge that kind of helps facilitate all that. So thank you so much for joining today. Definitely, I will provide more information as you all reach out. And I do want to introduce our special guest today. We have our Peace Corps regional recruiter, Alexander Barretta. He's an indigenous Coahuiltec American and an entrepreneur. He's currently the Peace Corps recruiter for Central California and Hawaii. Alexander is a returned Peace Corps volunteer that served in the Dominican Republic, where he helped his community improve waste collection strategies. So take it away, Alex.
Thank you. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, so what is the Peace Corps, right? I'm here as a representative with the U.S. Peace Corps, but I also serve, as was stated before. And I always kind of like to start off with the mission statement, right? So we have three main goals that we like to essentially strive to accomplish, right? The first goal is to help people in strategic countries and meet their need for trained men and women. And to me, the way I kind of organize this goal is by essentially saying that this is the professional aspect of it, right? When you're joining the Peace Corps, it's a 2-year-long commitment. And while that makes sound like a long time to go out to a new country, if you really think about your university career, you're probably going to take 4 years to graduate from college, and that's about half of that time, right? So it goes by real fast. But during that time period, you will essentially be managing a project and working with locals in the country where you are serving at. The second goal is to help promote a better understanding of Americans and part of the people served. And so this is really speaking to the cross-cultural aspect of the position. Given that you are fully immersed in these cultures, this is a very unique opportunity. In fact, I would say it's perhaps the most unique opportunity an American can take, given the fact that you may live perhaps in a small village, maybe in a city or town, but we operate over 60 countries around the world, right? So your experience may be living in a tropical forest, you may be living in the steppes of Central Asia or somewhere in the Pacific Islands, right? So your experience may be a little bit different from mine and what I'm going to detail later, but como quiera, or however it does show out, it's going to be an amazing experience in the sense of how fulfilling it can be. And that's the way I kind of understand the second goal. The third goal is to help promote a better understanding of other peoples on part of the Americas. And I think this is perhaps the most important goal. And that's because it's asking us as Peace Corps volunteers to then, once we complete service, to come back home or to enter our next step in life with the idea of sharing that greater perspective that we gain from living in these cultures, right? And the reason why I think it's the most important goal is because, right now we're going through a lot of political change. There's a lot of things going on. And I feel like it's getting harder and harder for people, especially in the United States, to really just connect with each other because we're so polarized, right? And the reason why I believe this goal helps to fight that sort of issue in our country is because when you're living in a totally different bubble than the one you grew up in, it essentially forces you to essentially be uncomfortable by trying to understand and learn how other people think who are brought up in entirely different ways than the way you were brought up as an American. And when you're able to kind of develop that greater sense of empathy and that greater sense of awareness of how other people are thinking, then it allows you to really kind of connect with people. Even if you don't necessarily agree with everything they say or do or how they act, that's, that allows you to essentially build that bridge. And I think, that really speaks to the third goal. So let me scroll down. In the Peace Corps, we have 6 professional sectors you can choose to work with. A lot of people, they've heard about teaching English abroad in different countries, and we do that as well. However, we have a plethora of different jobs across these sectors, right? So for instance, my main job was working with the local government on their waste management program. And that included creating educational programming, that included organizing people in events, that included writing a grant for funds, and so much more. So it was a very complex project. And the beautiful thing about this is, when you're graduating from college, most entry-level positions don't necessarily give you that autonomy or that ability to really manage a project from the beginning to the end of that project. Most entry-level positions give you very, bureaucratic work that is very repetitive in nature, where, you're doing things essentially for someone else, right? But with the Peace Corps, you have a lot of independence, as well as, the ability to really structure out your life and your goals regarding your work that you're doing. And I think there's a lot of professional development that comes from that, that can be useful for your career going forward, right? So what I tell people is, whether you're a mechanical engineer or whether you're wanting to go to medical school or you want to go into agriculture, there's so much that you can gain from this experience just by that fact alone. Like I kind of addressed earlier, we operate in over 60 countries around the world. So there's a vast array of different cultures and people we work with. But the beautiful thing is no matter where you're serving, whether it's Madagascar, the Mongolia steppes, Peru, or the Dominican Republic like myself, there's, that experience is for you and for you to essentially grow with. And honestly, I wouldn't really discount any opportunity in that sense. Even if like you were to apply and get into a position that wasn't necessarily the first position you really had in mind, right? So I always tell people to stay with an open mind and to just take that challenge in whichever country you end up serving in. So we call our service members volunteers, but it's a huge misnomer because even though you are titled as a volunteer, you do get benefits from it and you do get paid from it. So some of these benefits include a living stipend, a housing stipend, medical and dental coverage. Your student loans can be deferred during your service, meaning you don't have to necessarily pay them until you complete service. And actually that extends 6 months out of service. So that's a really good benefit. You also get 48 days of paid vacation time. And before you even become a volunteer, you go through 3 months of intense training where you learn about the language, the culture, as well as the array of different benefits and services you have to help support you. And this also includes benefits that you would gain after you complete service, right? So this is a little bit outdated because when you do complete service, you get just a little under $10,000 of what we call transition funds. And these are funds that you can have so that once you complete your service, you don't necessarily have to worry about getting back into the grind right away. You have a little bit of freedom to essentially plan out your next step in life with that additional $10,000 in your pocket. You also get put into the Covered Up Fellowship Program, which grants you tuition access to over 100 different graduate degree programs across the country. And that could be a great benefit to have if you ever want to get, a professional degree afterwards. And then there's a lot more stuff. I'm going to kind of try to speed a little bit through so I don't take up too much time. So safety and health, this is the most important thing about the Peace Corps is we can never mitigate all risk. And there's always going to be a component of risk to international travel, whether you're traveling as a tourist or as a Peace Corps volunteer. But there's a huge difference between being a tourist and a volunteer. And that's the fact that as an agency with the federal government, there's a whole bunch of support that we offer to mitigate those risks to as low as we can possibly have them, right? And what that means is this: in the event of an emergency or crisis, not only do we hire a group of doctors to help take care of you, but we also hire a safety and security team, right? And these people are essentially there to help support you during those times of need. But like I said, because of the fact that life is just filled with different factors and it's a very complex world, I want you to be aware that you do have the support behind you, but it's always, best to like understand and to make sure that you're not necessarily taking additional risk involved with you're joining the Peace Corps. What that means is, like, for example, let's say like there's a hurricane, right? The best thing to do is to follow the procedures that the Peace Corps provides for you to make sure that you're in a safe location during a hurricane. So when I was in the Caribbean during my service, we actually had 3 hurricanes come through, including Hurricane Maria, which devastated Puerto Rico. And it sort of graced the Dominican Republic, but we were, for the most part, saved from the full destruction of the hurricane. But during that entire crisis or potential crisis, the Peace Corps, they actually mandated that all volunteers be evacuated from their sites and placed in a centralized location where we could be sought after during that entire moment. So, it's a huge privilege, right? Because not, obviously the locals don't have this ability to just go to like a hotel during a hurricane, but this was basically our story. And that's kind of an example of some of the safety procedures that we do to make sure that our volunteers are safe during even like high risk situations such as hurricanes. I got a little bit of photos to share. So this is my host family right here. They were an amazing group of people. I actually stayed with them for about a year. In the Peace Corps, depending on which country you're serving, you may have the ability to move out or stay with your host family. In the Dominican Republic, we were asked to live with them for the first 3 months of service as a way to essentially integrate ourselves into the communities and to become more aware of the people, as well as to feel more safe and feel more comfortable. Of course, like I mentioned, I stayed with them much longer. And then my second year in service, I moved out into my own apartment where I stayed for that year. The beautiful thing about my family is they were half Japanese and half Dominican. So there was this bicultural, binational sort of awareness that they had. And I was able to appreciate that because I was a foreigner as well. And so they could understand like my struggles that I would have given the differences in my culture and the Dominican culture. And then this is a collective of photos that we took during the campaign that we ran called Limpia tu Comunidad, which was an educational and activist type of campaign to raise awareness of the pollution in the public spaces, as well as to invite locals from the community to get together and to clean up our community as we would our houses, basically. And then this is my team right here. This is the mayor of the region, my host mother, the assistant to the mayor. And then this is my friend Ken, who is a Japanese volunteer from JICA. And then this is the manager of a recycling plant. We all came to visit the recycling plant to see if we could negotiate a contract with them to come to our community to provide recycling services. Of course, it was an ongoing negotiation when I left. So I wasn't necessarily there when it was completed. And then this is my host, brother Daji, who, like I said, he was, he really proud of his Japanese culture, and he would often do different events around Japanese Dominican culture. He was a professional table tennis player, and he would provide like free lessons for the community. So that was really fun to really compete against a lot of the kids there and get beat real bad. And then this is a group of youth in my community. We were actually planning a dance for the Japanese Dominican culture. And so this is just us taking a little photo at the end. This guy right here, actually, his name is Anji. He ended up being one of my best friends during service. And I introduced him to his wife. And now he lives in Memphis, Tennessee. And here's some other volunteers who I served with. Even though I was the only American in my site, we often would get together for like the holidays or for special events. And the thing is, even though I was the only American in my site, I was never really alone. I had, of course, all the Dominican and Haitian people who were in my community. And of course, I think one of the main issues that most volunteers have to deal with is the sense of feeling alone or feeling lonely, which really hits hard your first few months in service when you're really brand new to your community. You're still kind of learning about the culture, and you're not necessarily connected, right? And that disconnect can often make you feel very lonely. For me, of course, I did feel that way, but I also, during that moment of sort of introspection and self-awareness of who I was in this space, it really allowed me to really think about, the things that I do, the things that I think, and the way I react to certain situations, how I get, for example, why do I get anxious under certain circumstances, right? And how can I deal with those things? And it really allowed me to kind of grow in a way to become not only more aware of my flaws, but also more aware of how my past traumatic experiences as a child still kind of impact me today as an adult, right? And because of that awareness and because of my ongoing work with that, I've not only been able to heal and become a stronger person, a more confident person, but it also has played a huge role into who I am and how I kind of view my central identity today as a father, for example. So I really kind of, owe a lot, not only to the people that were there to help support me, such as my friends here, but also to my community, the many people who I was able to develop really strong relationships with there. I also kind of like to share some photos of my free time. And that's because in the Peace Corps, it's a job, of course, it's a job, but it's also your life. And so when you are in the country, you're gonna have time to relax, you're gonna have vacation time, weekends or so, or time where you're just living in your own space, right? And you're not working. And I think that's important to also recognize and to think about as someone who may be considered a Peace Corps. And that's because, for me, like to have the ability to just go on a bus for about 20 minutes and to land in this little beach right here and to be sometimes be the only person there where I was able to meditate and relax and just, do the things that I do to make myself happy. Like those are the things that really made everything worth it, especially when I was going through a whole bunch of issues or struggling a lot. Like that's the beauty about the Peace Corps. It's so complex of an experience, so comprehensive of an experience. Another thing too is, and this may not necessarily be your experience going in the Peace Corps, but in the Dominican Republic, there were often a lot of NGOs or non-governmental organizations that came to do work, like humanitarian type of work. And so as a person who was well aware of the culture, who knew how to speak the language, I was often recruited as a volunteer to help interpret for doctors and engineers who would come through. And the thing about this photo for me is that it kind of speaks to two things, right? It speaks to the ability to have, or the opportunity that I had to work with these groups, which was an amazing opportunity to provide this really valuable work and to help people in my community out. But the second thing that I think is more important is, it kind of shows for me the difference between what the Peace Corps is doing and what other organizations are doing. And that's because, for example, these doctors who do good work, right? They'll come in for 2 weeks, right? And do really good work. They'll help out hundreds of people in my community and in communities around the space. But they would then go back to New Jersey, right? Whereas, for me, like for example, this family wasn't just a client that we had that spoke a different language I didn't understand. This wasn't just a foreigner to me. This was my neighbor. And so there's this deeper connection that you have that is more long lasting, that is more human, right? And it's not just, oh, I went to this place to go help out and save people. No, I went to this place and I developed these huge relationships that really allowed me to just, be me in this space. And now I can say, not only can I be myself in the United States, but I can be myself in the Dominican Republic. I have a whole new identity that I have gained from that experience. And I think that's a beautiful thing that this picture speaks to me about. My main job, which I really haven't talked too much about, was, like I said, working with waste management. So around the end of my first year in service, I submitted a grant and it got approved. And with those funds, we're able to purchase raw materials for trash cans. And so my second year was really strategic and really like hard hitting, because I would have to plan out hundreds of different events or meetings with different people to make sure that we have the right people to help support this project, as well as to understand where we're going to place these trash cans. And so you can see here some of the the plastic barrels that we purchased. And then, of course, I was able to find a local workshop to help provide that labor. And then we're able to install them in over 50 locations across 3 different communities. And it was, even though you can see here it's somewhat of a basic design, it was a groundbreaking experience for the community to have a publicly owned and operated trash can, right? Because there was no such infrastructure in the entire region. And the beautiful thing about this actually is this, right now, I'm trying to start a new organization. Actually, I'm trying to start an organization called Vocal Goals, which is gonna be kind of a copy and paste of Chipotle and the Peace Corps, where we essentially have the customization aspect of Chipotle, and then the authentic immersion experience of the Peace Corps all in one. And while I was trying to kind of create this organization, I went back to the Dominican Republic, so I can start creating authentic partnerships with people. And when I was there, it was beautiful. I was driving all across the island, and everywhere I went, I was able to see these exact same trash cans all over the island. Actually, after I'm done with this, I'll try to find a picture of it. Of course, they look a lot more professional, a lot cleaner, but it was just really beautiful to kind of see this small project that I was able to work on, and how not only was it successful in the region where I was at, but it got picked up and it got improved upon by the locals, right? So that was a beautiful thing to see over the summer. A friend of mine that came to visit, this is generally how my site will look like: very tropical, very hot, very rural. See the mango trees, it's a lemon tree, it looks like. This is my home. Very humble little cabin in the woods. The rent was about $40 a month, if you can imagine. I miss it. Yeah. Supermoon. This was one of my host brothers during our training period. So I kind of briefly addressed it. Your first 3 months when you arrive to the country, you go through a training period where you're learning about the language and everything. And during those 3 months, you're actually placed with a host family. So during my time as a volunteer, I actually had multiple host families. I had 2 for my training, and then 1 during my service, my actual service. So that's something you would also have to think about and reflect on. But for me, it was an amazing experience. Ariel, his name was Ariel. We would often go into the jungles, and he would we would just search for different tropical fruits to eat. So it was a really fun time. Speaking of tropical fruit, I love the guayabana. And then this is back when I was a few pounds lighter. I need to get back in shape, but maybe take out these pandemic pounds out. I always ask people, what kind of horsepower do you prefer? I'm a traditional guy. I like my motorcycle. You are what you eat. So this is a self-portrait of who I was in the Peace Corps. lots of plantains. And then that's basically my end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all that insightful information, Alex. Also, I just want to introduce Camacho Diaz, who's our on-campus UH Manoa recruiter, and see if he may want to say a couple words.
Aloha. I definitely shouldn't have gone outside because it's so bright out here. I'm just like blinded by the sun. This is a bad call. But you know, as you know, I'm new here, so I'm figuring it out. But yeah, I think Alex did a great job going over the basics of the Peace Corps. I was in Madagascar, another tropical island, but I was in the highlands of Madagascar, so it was an island, but I was 4 hours away from the capital, about a day away from the beach. So I was tucked away, you know, in like some mountains. It was cold. Lived in a brick house. Felt like a cave because there's no insulation. But I had such a good time. I extended for another year. My primary project, so the Peace Corps first goal, was teaching English to 2 sections of 50 sixth graders and 2 sections of 70 10th graders. So a lot of students in a small class, 3 kids to a table, big blackboard, chalk, sponge to erase. Good times. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about the Peace Corps or wants to just come talk story, I'm at QLC 209. I have office hours from 11 to 1 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm here if you need me. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Kamaka. Sarah, I don't know if you have it, or Ginny, if you have any questions, you are able to unmute yourselves now. So please feel free to do so. Don't worry, part of the recording, I'll edit it. So anything from the questions won't end up on the final recording that we'll be sharing out. But any questions that have come up, any places you all want to travel to, languages that you want to explore further?
I'm just curious, what were your guys' majors in college? And then did you select your sector, or were you like just assigned a sector?
I guess I'll start since I'm unmuted. So I majored in communications and I got my certificate in Spanish. So I wanted to go to South America. So I was super set on Peru and Costa Rica. And when you apply to the Peace Corps, you can put your 3 preferences. So I just needed a 3rd choice because I was so set on going to South America and speaking Spanish. And I was on the M section, and then I saw Madagascar, and I was like, oh, cool, like the movie. So I just chose it, not even thinking it was the option. And then I ended up getting an interview for Madagascar and ended up loving it, extending for a year, found a lot of similarities between Hawaii and Madagascar. So I like to think Madagascar chose me.
I feel the same way, right? So I actually did not choose the Dominican Republic. And I had the opposite sort of preference. I did not want to go to Latin America. I wanted to go somewhere different than where I already been. But back in college, I was I had a double major in political science and in business. And so with that, I applied for a CED position, which is Community and Economic Development in Mali, which is in West Africa. I also chose, at the time that I applied, we were able to choose 3 different locations. So I chose Mali, Burma, Myanmar, and Kyrgyzstan Republic in Central Asia. And that's because I just wanted to go somewhere that was like literally like as far a place I could get from Texas or from the United States, you know. And I actually got invited to Mali, but literally that same week I got my invitation, there was a terrorist attack in the capital city, and the Peace Corps decided to, because of the safety concerns, get out of Mali. So with that in mind, they told me, okay, you can't serve in Mali no more. So you have 2 options: the Dominican Republic or Macedonia, which is in Southeast Europe. And I chose the Dominican Republic. So I didn't want to go to Latin America, but I went, and just like Kamaka said, like, you know, the way it played out, it just felt like it was meant to be. Like that, it chose me for a reason. And yeah. How about you, Jen? Would you like to serve somewhere, or do you have an idea where you want to go?
Um, I kind of want to go somewhere in Asia, but I don't really care as long as I go away. Yeah, and I'm majoring in Chinese and business market. Well, I was finance, but I changed to marketing now. So yeah.
And did you change your major?
Yeah, I changed from finance to marketing.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's a very applicable skill set. So I'm trying to learn marketing right now. I'm not good at it. How about you, Kamaka?
Me what?
Oh, no, never mind. I was talking about marketing.
Oh,
Skill set.
yeah. I got some tips for that, but maybe on a different call.
I don't know. I'm learning international marketing right now, and because I have like Chinese background, so it's like really fun to like compare like how people market in different countries. So maybe I'll learn a little bit more if I go like Peace Corps somewhere else and learn their culture as well. Then I can market to their country.
There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. Expand your knowledge worldwide. That's what it's all about.
I was wondering what was the hardest part of going to a new country, and what was a highlight that you want to share?
You want to take it, Kamaka?
Yeah, yeah. I'll share. So the hardest part, usually it's the things you don't expect. So going to the Peace Corps, you're thinking, oh, no running water, no electricity. Those things will be the hardest part. But then you kind of realize those are just conveniences that we have over here. It just makes your life easier. But by the time you're pulling water from a well, taking bucket baths for a while, you kind of just get used to it. Eating by candlelight, whatever it is. Not all countries are the same. Some places you do have electricity or running water. But for me, it was just like keeping myself healthy. Like I had appendicitis during the first month of training. I had some other diseases and illnesses. Like there's like malaria going on, the plague, measles. So it's like just keeping yourself healthy and like surviving. And then you end up you're okay. You end up being fine. You have good stories to tell, and you have a great Peace Corps staff to take care of you. So yeah, and I think the highlights is just kind of going from what I said is like you realize you're capable of more than you think. You can get through challenges, whether that's being sick or like getting stuck in a cyclone and sleeping on one of the buses and then walking 8 hours to your friend's site the next day. And then you just figure things out. You really just realize you're capable of more than you think. And I think the human connection of just being able to just meet people on such a grassroots level and just take away technology and all the distractions we have with social media and just like reconnect with people on like the lowest level possible. I think that was like my favorite, like my highlight of my service, and just like that sense of community within your own community and among the Peace Corps volunteers.
I was gonna share a photo actually of the trash cans, if you don't mind. I don't know if you can see it, but yeah. So this is the new and improved model you can see here. It includes a number for assistance, different types of organics, paper, plastics, and then a random white guy photo. But yeah, it was amazing. I was able to see these all over. Man, it was just so exciting to see. That was my best highlight, actually. But for a difficult thing, I kind of addressed for me, it was really just, I come from, like a, I guess you could say like a Mexican American background, right? So, you know, there's a little bit of a vergüenza, or what we call like a vergüenza, or like a shame to not be able to speak fluent Spanish. As an example, like for example, my grandmother, she passed away a year into my service, and I was able to actually visit her. So I got to see her right before she passed away, actually. But when I came, the beautiful thing was I was actually able to communicate with her and speak with her. So before she was able to pass, I actually finally got to really connect with her just a little bit, because she could only speak Nahuatl and Spanish. She couldn't speak English. And of course, I wasn't able to speak Nahuatl either, so that wasn't going to help. But yeah, it was really beautiful to kind of connect with her in that sense. But that first year, trying to understand and learn Spanish, because when I first got to the Dominican Republic, my Spanish was very broken. It was like, you know, intermediate. It was whatever I was able to pick up from my family growing up. But I was able to kind of fine tune it and then get better at it. Also, Dominican Spanish is very different. It's like very notorious for being one of the more difficult dialects to learn. So that's another thing too, is I came back and people were like, I can't understand you because you're speaking Dominican Spanish now, you know? So that was fun. Yeah, that was a challenge for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great questions.
Yeah. Sarah, did you have a question? I feel like I'm taking up all of the time.
You're all good. Sorry, it's probably really loud where I am. I guess I was wondering, you guys kind of touched on that, especially at the beginning, there can be some loneliness during service. Like, how did you combat that or kind of move past that stage?
You want to go, Kamaka?
Yeah, I can share. So Peace Corps, I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere for the most part. You know, you're depending on where you're put. You know, the closest volunteer to me was a 2-hour bike ride, and then the closest like civilization to me was a 4-hour bus ride on like bad roads. So you have a lot of time to yourself, but I think your community, like I think Alex said in his presentation, like he never really felt alone, because like you live alone, you know, you do things alone, but really you have your neighbors, you have your other teachers, your students, your friends in your community that kind of just becomes your family. And then like just keeping yourself busy with hobbies. Like I had a dartboard that I bought over there. I picked up a guitar. I got nunchucks. I learned how to use nunchucks over there. So there's, like, there's hard drives that people pass around with like TV shows, movies, yoga videos, workout videos. Like you can learn a new language. So I think as long as you keep yourself busy and you have things to look forward to, that kind of helps you, you know, get through the isolation.
Yeah, I agree. You know, like for me, like a big part of that sense of loneliness was just the fact that I couldn't necessarily communicate 100% the way I wanted to, or at the very beginning when you still don't know nobody in your sight, like, you know, that could be make you feel lonely. But you know, just like Kamaka said, like as you make those relationships and they grow, like that's your new family, you know. And I've never felt lonely towards like, you know, like I'll say like after my like 3rd month, I was totally fine, you know, in that sense. And then like Kamaka said too, like the challenges that you think are going to be the toughest are not really the toughest, like electricity, the running water, all this stuff. Like we're so resilient, we just pick it up, you know. It becomes our new normal. And before you know it, you're living a boring, mundane life in the middle of Madagascar, the Dominican Republic. You know, you're just drinking your coffee, going for your morning run, talking to your neighbors, and it's like super boring, right? Like,
but I miss that. I miss that so much.
But it's also like so different too, right? And I mean, I miss it so much too. That's why I'm trying to do this Coco Goals thing so I can go back, really, you know. But yeah, I mean, that's that, right? Good question though, Sarah.
Thanks. Yeah, that's reassuring.
I was just wondering, it just popped in my head. You said there's like no running water, or some places don't have running water or electricity. So does that also mean there's no like internet? How do you get things done if there's no electricity and stuff?
For me, I had, so like for half a day, I wouldn't have electricity. For half a day, I wouldn't have water. But I did have water and electricity, and I had Wi-Fi actually. I was pretty connected, so I was able to communicate with my family on Facebook Messenger or on WhatsApp. But I was talking to my family all the time. Camacho seems like it was more remote, and that speaks to the differences in experiences. I was in a rural location, but I was about like a 2-mile hike to the town, like which was about 40,000 people. And also, and this is something that's very unique to the Dominican Republic, we were allowed to ride on motorcycles. So, I didn't necessarily have to walk if I didn't want to. I could have just hitchhiked or like got on a motorcycle and gone, But yeah, that's another thing too. It's like Kabaka's experience is very different from my experience. And so you just have to really gauge that,
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about like Peace Corps is that everyone's experience is so unique, depending on your post and like I was in Africa, so they're a little less developed, and yeah, it's hard. A good thing is to not compare like your service to another person's service, whether that's in country or out of country, because like everyone has challenges, whether that there's challenges that come with having electricity, with having Wi-Fi, without having it, so for us, like we would have to go to the city to get Wi-Fi, like at a hotel or a cafe or something, and that's when we could connect with our family. But if you had some signal, you could connect on Facebook Messenger. There's like a pay-as-you-go kind of plan, and that was just specific for my country. Yeah, and it just depends. Yeah, I think like they said there's Posh Corps, Peace Corps, and then Africa. So like Posh Corps is like Morocco, like Eastern Europe. You're in like an apartment. You have like a stove, microwave, like all that stuff. And then like South America, Central America, maybe Eastern Asia. That's like the kind of like the experience that Alex had. And then Africa is like, sometimes you might live in a mud hut, and like we couldn't ride motorcycles, and you might have to share a well or water pump with like bunch of other people in your community and walk like up like I don't know half a kilometer just to do that. So it just all depends, but it's super unique, and that's what the Peace Corps is all about.
Yeah, it's pretty wild like that. But you get used to it. It's a weird thing, but you get used to
and like Alex said, you're more resilient than you think. Like Peace Corps volunteers are so resilient. You just figure out how to get by.
And then can you? Oh, sorry.
No, go right ahead, please.
Could you like talk more about the pre-service training, and then do you also have more training when you get to your?
So pre-service training, that's the training I was talking about, where it's all held in the country, but it's about 3 months long, and it may be different, right? So for Camacho, he may have a different experience. For us, it was split into 2 different segments. The first was called the pre-service training, and the second was called community-based training. And the pre-service training was held in the capital city of Santo Domingo, where we were learning more about like the program staff and what they're doing. So for example, like the doctors at the medical unit, they'll come by, provide like education on our healthcare and what we need to do in the event we get sick. If we need prescription medication, where do we get that? The safety and security team will come by and they will do the same thing regarding to our own safety, risk or hazards we may have to endure or overcome, or crises and emergencies and how to deal with those procedures at that moment. We would get different what we would call like charlas or talks from different volunteers who will come and talk about what they're doing on the field, so that we can get like a small glimpse into that world before we entered it. And then we also did like a site visit where we went to a volunteer site to actually see what they're doing, so that we can understand, okay, what we're going to get into basically. The second half was dedicated more to your job, right? And I think it should be clear too that during both periods, half of that time was what I just mentioned, and then the other half was dedicated to your language, where you're learning with a professor, typically from that region or the location you're serving in. But with the community-based training, we were like a lot of that second half that wasn't language-based was more centered towards our job itself, right? So what's the organization we're working with? Is it like going to be a government organization, or is it a private organization? Are there any procedures that they do that we need to be aware of? They will give us like case studies and like different examples of what to do. We would also go visit like a location that would be like similar to some of the work that we would be doing, so to get kind of like a hands-on approach to the work. And if Camacho, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's similar. 3 months of training. In Madagascar, we lived with a host family. We had like 4 hours of language training every day. Then there was safety and security, health, diversity, and like all these types of trainings. A lot of acronyms, so many acronyms.
Yeah.
But yeah, they equipped you with the knowledge that you need to get through your service, and that time is really cool because you get to become really close with the people in your group, and that becomes your first family. So yeah, I really enjoyed the training.
Thank you.
Besides having my appendix removed, but that was still kind of fun.
You had it removed in Madagascar or while
Madagascar.
training?
Yeah, it was right before our practicum. Or right after our site visit, I got sick, and then I ended up having to go. I was 8 hours away from the hospital, so they had to come to the training center, and then we had to go 4 hours back to the city, and then did some tests, and then they said I had acute appendicitis, so they had to remove it over there. Usually they send people to South Africa, but I think appendicitis is something you got to do pretty quickly, so they did it over there, and I was totally fine. They asked me if I wanted to call my family before or after, and I said after. So, I just like, the doctor put his like Wi-Fi hotspot on, and I FaceTime my mom, and I was like, "Hey mom, I just had surgery." Yeah, so that was like, it was funny. Yeah. But I told her it won't ever happen again, and that's true.
True, right?
Got fun.
That's a true immersive experience. Any other questions from anybody else? Well, one thing I'll share just from my own experience of having worked with various Peace Corps applications and students looking to go into the Peace Corps. And I don't think this may have been mentioned, or you kind of alluded to it, but if you happen to apply to a location that you're really interested in, and for whatever reason it doesn't work out for you to be able to go there, don't give up on the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps will rather work with you to help place you somewhere else that will ideally work with both of you, work for the Peace Corps and work for you as well. I just say this because sometimes I feel like people get too much stuck on like the location as opposed to the experience overall. And so with that being said, I'll share an experience from one of our past students. I forget where she really wanted to go, but as in the reason she was disqualified from it was because of something she had put on her health screening. She's like early onsets of, I think, like asthma, and so with that in mind, she was disqualified. And at first it was very frustrating for her. And I tried to like calm her down. And I was like, and did a little research about the air quality in that country. And it's not the best air quality. And so with that in mind, like the Peace Corps was very cautious, like we don't want you to go somewhere where it's unsafe for you. So with that being said, they worked with her, the regional recruiter at the time worked, and she actually ended up going to Namibia, and she had an amazing time. Was actually yeah. So I'm just a story to share that I think if you're more open, I think you're probably, if you have a specific sector you have in mind, they'll probably try to fit that more than like the location specifically. Because especially if you have like, let's say a health sector and you have that background, it wouldn't make sense to put you into like community economic development with your health background. So, so yeah, so just kind of be open to the experience, and who knows, you might have a great adventure nonetheless. So, but yeah, I guess if there are no more other questions, I will, I just want to thank everybody, well, both Alexander Barrera and Camacho Diaz for joining us today around this conversation about the Peace Corps, and then also just mention the Peace Corps prep program that is available here at UH Manoa. And please feel free to reach out. If there is any questions for anybody, you can email the office at uhip@hawaii.edu, and I'm happy to connect you with or assist you in any capacity. So thank you again, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Have a good day.